talk more about the tensions along the Korean Peninsula is Craig Snyder, President and CEO, World Affairs Council of Philadelphia. And Craig, what's your reaction to President Trump's essentially doubling down on his very tough rhetoric?
Well, it is tough rhetoric, but this is a very tough situation. It's not clear whether the president is actually issuing an ultimatum that is backed up by the full force of the American government, or whether he was speaking more off the cuff. It's just not clear whether this is truly policy or rhetoric.
And how problematic is that? Do you see that vagueness potentially escalating tensions further?
It's certainly a possibility. Look, in the Potsdam Declaration in 1945, July 1945, the United States, the Soviet Union, and Great Britain said to Japan that Japan must surrender unconditionally at the end of World War II or face, quote, prompt and utter destruction, end quote. So it's not like this kind of language has never been used before, but when it was used in World War II, it was meant. It was a serious threat that was followed almost immediately by the use of nuclear weapons against Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We do not know whether or not Trump and the Trump administration intend to go all the way and to make good on this threat. What they've said is that the capability on the part of the North Koreans to hit the United States with a nuclear weapon, the mere capability, is unacceptable, as opposed to the North Koreans actually taking action with such a capability. That's a big distinction because they are moving rapidly towards that capability. Probably don't have it yet, but they're moving rapidly towards that capability. And so if the policy of the United States is that the capability itself is unacceptable, then the kind of threat, really a Potsdam kind of threat that came from the president could be the most serious international situation that we've seen since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Well, and Craig, let's compare the two camps. I mean, there you have the president, after his meeting with the National Security Council, saying that let's see what the North Koreans do with Guam. An event at Guam would be met with a response the likes of which the world's never seen before. And then you have North Korea saying, well, they would fire missiles just short of Guam in the waters. Is there daylight between those two?
Well, there's a little daylight, but it's a very dangerous, murky twilight, I guess I would say. Look, the North Koreans have 70 years at this point of knowing how to provoke, knowing how to go up to the line and more than occasionally over the line of what the United States and other countries in the world find acceptable. This is a real game of chicken that's being played, and it's being played much more in the dark even than in the worst days of the Cold War. Even in the worst days of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, there was a hotline. There were channels for de-escalation in the Cuban Missile Crisis, the worst that it got. There were back-channel negotiations. We have none of that, as far as the world knows, between North Korea and Washington today. And so the chance for miscalculation, the chance for each side trying to bluff each other back from the brink could fail, and you could go over the brink.
Well, even inadvertently, right? Because the North Koreans, the precision in their intermediate missiles may not be there. They may intend to fire one 20 miles short of Guam, but there's no guarantee that would happen.
That's absolutely true. When you start, you know, as they say, the fog of war descends whenever kinetic weapons are used by any power against any other. You can't really control what happens. So the United States has to be ready. Guam is an American-controlled territory. There are large American bases there, and it is right to say that an attack on Guam is an attack on the territory of the United States. That is correct. So does firing missiles that land in international waters but are clearly aimed at Guam, does that constitute an attack on Guam? You know, again, the North Koreans are trying to push right up to the line, or at least threatening to, and trying to test what Washington will do.
But Craig, Mattis and Trump have made something very clear, which is already very obvious, that the U.S. is, well, that North Korea is grossly outmatched by the U.S. in terms of any kind of nuclear arms race. So why would Kim Jong-un test that? I mean, surely he knows that should it come to that, there's no way he would be the winner.
Well, I believe that Kim Jong-un and his regime are, while evil in many ways, are rational. I believe but you have to look at it from their point of view. And their point of view is that their goal, the objective of all of this, is to stay in power, to keep that dynastic regime going for as long as possible. They watched what happened when Muammar Gaddafi gave up his nuclear weapons program, when Saddam Hussein gave up his weapons of mass destruction programs. They've watched what happened, and they saw those regimes toppled by the United States. They have lived in fear ever since the 1950s that the United States, which has always had the power to do it, would overthrow their regime. They believe that having this capability to hit the United States is their best shield, their best defense, the best way for them to stay in power. And they are trying to say, in every possible way, that they will not give it up, that they will advance towards that capability. There's a lot of talk in Washington about trying to negotiate, but I'm not sure what the basis for negotiation would be. We are saying, and indeed several presidents have said now in a row, that we cannot accept this capability on the part of North Korea, and the North Koreans are saying and showing that they have every intention to have the capability to strike the United States with nuclear weapons as soon as they can breach all of the technological barriers to getting there.
Craig Snyder, President and CEO of the World Affairs Council of Philadelphia. Craig, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.